Baba Booey.
That was a stupid thing. So, I know why you're watching this. You want to get as much candy as possible on Halloween. Because when you're a kid, Halloween's basically the only time the entire year where you basically get as much candy as you want. Well, for most people. So it's good to have, some strategies, just some good things to know before you go out for Halloween. So let's just get straight into the strategies. Okay, first things first. I know, but I'm gonna just talk about a little bit of safety stuff because safety first or whatever. So if you're going to a new, different neighborhood to go trick or treating, just make sure it's a safe neighborhood. It's pretty, easy to tell if a neighborhood is safe. If it looks like this, then probably avoid it. If it looks like this, you'll be fine. Then another thing, don't go to creepy houses. Just don't. Yeah, your little group of friends. Oh, we're gonna go to the haunted house over here, whatever. Dude, there's a guy who killed himself in that house. First of all, not only could it be potentially dangerous, there could be a homeless guy in there that could just kill you, but it's just a waste of time. You're wanting candy, not to sneak into some random houses. Another thing for safety is if it's COVID time still when you're watching this, maybe don't trick or treat. Because yes, you can wear a mask, but the thing is that the people giving you candy are going to be touching it. You don't know where their hands has been, so it may not be a great idea to trick or treat during COVID. But if you want to do it, you can do it. I just want to recommend it. Just please, just wear a mask. It's not that hard. If you're going trick or treating this year or any year that has COVID, just wear a mask. It's the least you can do. And last thing, let your parents check your candy after you trick or treat. I know there's a little bit of a thing called the parent tax, which when your parents check your candy, they're going to take stuff for their own, usually Butterfinger, Almond Joys, Mounds, that kind of thing. But I'm pretty sure it's worth it so they can check, make sure there's no drugs or razor blades in your candy. When you're going trick or treating by yourself or with friends, it's a good idea to have like a cell phone or something, have a friend that has a cell phone, because if something bad happens, it's a good idea to have a cell phone so you can call 911. If there's somebody following you, call 911 or go back to your house just to be safe. If you're trick-or-treating and somebody says, oh, you want to come inside? No matter how nice they seem, don't do it, because it's highly dangerous. So that's about it for the safety portion. Now let's go to the stuff about age. So first of all, if you're like ages like 1 through 10, it's basically the law that you're going to have to go with a parent. I know you don't want to, but you just gotta do it. And then 13 all the way to 18 is, when you're a teenager. And that, if you're mature enough and you're smart enough, you can go by yourself, but I still recommend you would go with a group of friends. Then I'm going to talk about kind of the age limit when it comes to trick-or-treating. Anything, like, 18 is the highest you can go. Because if you go trick-or-treating, like, after that, it's just kind of weird. You're an adult, so it's like, if you're 18 and above, you most likely have a job, hopefully, and you could just buy candy yourself, so there's no point in trick-or-treating anyways. It's just weird to go trick-or-treating after those ages, so I'm sorry, if you're above 18, this video is going to be useless for you. Now for this point forward in the video, I'm going to be talking about a law that I made up myself. I'm dubbing it Liam's Law of Candy Evaluation. And what that means is the way people see you takes into account how much candy you're going to get. Now, this is just a fact. Some people do it on purpose, some people do it subconsciously. Depending on how they see you, usually from appearance, they'll dictate on purpose in their heads or just without even realizing how much candy they're going to give you. So how does this go into age? Well, it's just a sad fact, but if you're a teenager, you're going to get less candy. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen. That's the advantage to being 12 and under during Halloween, is that typically people give you more candies because you're a little kid. If you're older and you're taller, people are like, oh, those hoodlums, I'm only gonna give them a little bit of candy. It's just something people do. You're just gonna have to deal with it. The only thing you could do to really combat this is to try to make yourself look younger. Like, say you have a little bit of a mustache going on, just shave that and people will think you're younger and you'll get more candy. Another important factor is time. Now, this is just a simple one. The more time you have, the more candy you're going to be able to get. So it's all about what's a good time to start trick-or-treating. Typically, the most early trick-or-treaters arise around 5:30, so you can do this as well, so you can have plenty of time to trick-or-treat. So, if you're able to, just start as early as possible. Now, what's the absolute latest you can trick-or-treat? Typically, everybody locks their doors and turns off their lights at around 11, but I recommend sticking around until 12, that is if you don't have curfew. Your parents will most likely give you some sort of curfew. If they're nice, it'll be late, but if it's early, just do what your parents say so you don't get in trouble. But if you're able to, I would just keep trick-or-treating as late as possible so you can just yield as much candy from all this time that you have. Now, most people who say they're going to trick-or-treat this long, they usually give up after around 3 hours. They're like, I'm too tired, I'll just go home. Remember, we're trying to get as much candy as possible. So if you're going to do this, then you got to do it. Just don't give up. I believe in you.
Do it!
If you need to, take some sort of energy drink or something before you go trick-or-treating so you have plenty of energy to last the entire time. But again, going back to some safety, if you are going to trick-or-treat past 10, make sure you do it with some friends because you're going to want to have the buddy system. You're going to want to stay safe when you're trick-or-treating this late. Alright, now for the more important things. Alright, candy storage. So, if you're wanting as much candy as possible, you're going to need something good to store it in, right? Now, I'm just going to say this, sack, not bucket. Sacks are just better in every way than buckets. Because sacks, you can kind of just have it over your shoulder. It doesn't need that much effort to carry it, and it can carry more candy. I'm just going to say this, you know those cheap little freaking pumpkin-shaped buckets? Don't use those. Those suck. Not only do you have to carry it around with you constantly, but it doesn't even hold that much candy, and it will just be more weight to carry than if you just got a sack. So what are some good alternatives than to use a crappy plastic bucket? Well, one thing, which if you have no money, this is a good choice, just use a pillowcase. I've used pillowcases in the past, and they work perfectly fine. You can just have it over your shoulder, and they cost no money because you have pillows in your house, I'm pretty sure. And the great thing about pillowcases is that they hold a lot of candy, so pillowcase is a good choice. But the best choice, well, at least what I think is the best choice for trick-or-treating, is something like this. Maybe a little bit bigger than this, but the reason this is so good is not only is it a sack, but watch this. There's something like this you can actually wear on your back, and that's really useful because you don't even have to carry it. You can just have it on your back at all times while you're trick-or-treating. So when it comes to candy storage, I recommend getting something like this. I used it last year and it was really good. I filled it up with candy and it was great. So for candy storage, I would recommend something like this if you can have it. Alright, so another thing that's important is mapping. It's really good idea to like make a map of your neighborhood when you go trick-or-treating so you can have like the perfect route throughout all the houses. Because if you can make a map that reaches as many houses as possible, that equals more candy. All you have to do is just go on Google Maps or whatever, make a map, find a map of your neighborhood, and just draw the route over it, and so you can have the perfect route to go trick-or-treating. Just make sure you go through the good houses that give out the good candy. Speaking of houses, let's talk about houses. Now, if you're going to a new neighborhood to trick-or-treat, then you're not going to know anything, so you're going in there blind, so I can't give that much advice on that. But if you're going through, your regular old neighborhood, make sure to remember last year which houses give out the good candy, and even go through the houses that give the bad candy. I know it seems like a dumb idea, but just do it. Trust me, it'll be important later. Of course, avoid the houses that will be dangerous. And another thing, it's a common misconception that the rich people hand out a lot of good candy. Like, a lot of people seem to think that rich people hand out full-size candy bars, and while that may be true some places, in my experience, that has literally never happened to me. In fact, now, this might just be me, but it seems like the rich people give out worse candy. Like, a good example I can think of is a neighborhood I trick-or-treated in last year. There was one house that was not necessarily a rich people house, but the lady there gave lots of good candy, like big bags of M&Ms. But then when we traveled up to the rich people houses, they gave us like horrible candy, and one of the people was giving out pennies too, which is just despicable. If you give out pennies on Halloween,
you deserve the death sentence.
Okay, so moving on to okay. Alright, now for your costume. This is a pretty important part about Halloween, so just make sure you're listening. Now, we're going to talk about costumes from order to low effort to high effort, like what's a good idea. So for low effort costumes, like we've all been there, Halloween's tomorrow, you don't have a costume ready, you throw something together and you just hope that'll work. If you can avoid this, it would probably be a good idea to try to. It's just a good idea to plan your costume and make it before Halloween. But if the time comes that you have to make a low effort costume quickly, then I only have one rule for you. Make it funny. This is really important. If you're doing a low effort costume, make it funny. Because it's not that hard to come up with a little funny costume that people will look at and they'll be like, oh, that's funny, here's some candy. Because if people see something funny, they're going to give you a lot of candy. Again, going back into my law of candy evaluation. An example I can think of is that, again, the last time I went trick-or-treating, I didn't have a costume planned. So I put this coat on, and then I put on this little hat that I had, and I told everybody that I was a Canadian. It sounds dumb, but people thought it was funny, and I got a lot of candy that year. So if you're doing a low effort costume, just make sure to make it funny. Okay, at this point in the video, I looked up funny Halloween costumes, and I got Christmas costume, inflatable astronaut space costume, inflatable costume, full body suit, Christmas cosplay costumes. Why? Why is there just a JPEG of a man photoshopped into it? Everything about this fills me with rage. Why does this exist? Another good example I can think of is take a look at Jim from The Office. You know, they have Halloween specials every once in a while on the show, and Jim always has like a low effort costume, but it's usually something funny. Now for like middle effort costumes. This is typically what most people do. For the middle effort costumes, just try your best to make it look good and so people will like it. If you have this amount of time and thought put into the costume, a good idea is to have it have some sort of function. Make it have some sort of efficiency that would be useful. A good example is the costume that I'm wearing right now. You see, I have this gas mask, right? But the thing that's so good about this is that, think about it, it's COVID time. So if I wore a mask and had this thing on, I would be protected from COVID, and it would be a cool looking costume. So since I had this time to think about my costume, I was able to put something in it that would be actually useful. Another good way to have a costume be efficient is have some sort of built-in transportation. Like, you can ride a bike any time for Halloween, but it's even better if the costume you're wearing makes sense to be with a bike. A good example is, you know, a paperboy. Now for the high effort costumes. These ones are either ones that you buy off the internet, or you spent like a couple weeks making it. Now the only thing I can say for this is just make it look really cool. If it sticks out and it has lots of fancy stuff in it, people are going to like it, and people are going to point you out and be like, hey, that kid's cool. I personally have never made a high effort costume in my life, but if you're the type of fella that wants to spend time to do that, go right ahead. Alright, moving on from costumes and now going to groups. Now, I personally think it's a good idea to go in groups during Halloween. One, obviously safety, and two, you can use a strategy where different people spread out, which means you can cover more land and get more candy. Plus, if you have a friend group, you can pull each other's candy together, and if you guys are nice, you can separate the candy equally. Also, having a friend group where you know who likes what candy is a good idea when it comes to trading, which is something we're going to get onto later. Now for some extra strategies that are good for hauling in candy. Now, this whole video has been just talking about the law of candy evaluation, which is just to make yourself look good to get more candy. But these next strategies are just kind of like cheat codes to get more candy, so let's just get into this. Now, first of all, we gotta talk about Take One bowls. We all know them. We all have that neighbor that's too lazy to hand out candy themselves, so they just leave out a bowl with a little sticky note that says, "Take one." Do you take one? Honestly, it all depends on who is around you and how many people are around you. If there's a lot of people around you in the Take One bowl, and you know there's people who have their eyes on the bowl, it's a good idea just to take one, because if you take more than one, you know there's going to be that bratty kid that's like, "They took more than one! They took more than one candy!" And then their mom stomps up to you and they're like, "Give that candy to my little girl!" It's not fun for anybody. Everybody's going to hate you. So if there's a lot of people around you looking at the bowl, just take one. If there's only a little bit of people and they seem distracted, it's a good chance to be able to take maybe a handful, but be discreet about it and make sure nobody's looking. If there's people around, but they're like far away, you could probably take a couple handfuls. But if you can see absolutely nobody who's looking at the bowl, and I mean nobody's looking, well, you can just pour that baby into your bag. Yep, I said it. Just pour the entire thing in your bag. It's kind of a scummy thing to do, but hey, this is about getting candy, not being nice. Now, another strategy. You can only do this if you have like a lot of time, but if you do have extra time during Halloween, it's not a bad idea. So, say you already went through your old neighborhood, you got your candy, you go back to your house. Put on a whole different costume where people won't be able to recognize you, and go through the neighborhood again. It's probably a good idea to make it be a costume that hides your face. If you can do this, it essentially means you can go through your entire neighborhood twice, which means double candy, which is just... If you're able to pull this off, I would highly recommend it. The candy haul from this would just be incredible. And then the third strategy, which is not necessarily a good one, I don't think. It won't work on everybody, but you can try it if you want to. It's where you have another bag and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my brother was sick. He couldn't trick-or-treat. This one's for him." Now, most people won't fall for this and they'll be like, "Oh, you're just trying to get more candy." For the more gullible people, they'll be like, "Oh, I'll give you some more candy for your little brother." But in reality, you're just going to take that candy for yourself. Again, this one's kind of obvious that you're trying to get more candy. Not everybody's going to fall for it. But most people are going to do it just so they can, like, not feel bad that they didn't give your little brother candy. Alright, now for the candy trade. Now, I believe I said this earlier, but even if you know a house gives out bad candy or just a candy you don't particularly like, take it anyways. Because we all have that one weird friend who likes Smarties for some reason, and that's another good reason to go in groups during Halloween. Because you have a bunch of different people with different candy tastes, so you can trade around candy until everyone has everything that they like. Now, I made a chart here displaying like different candies and like their relative value in the candy trade. This might not be your particular taste. It isn't mine either. There's some on here that I would put higher and some that I would put lower. But this is just like in general what people like and what people don't like. Now, notice how I numbered it 1 to 10. That actually has a meaning. So say Dots, for example, has a value of 3. Twix has a value of 7. So you put 7 and 3 together, that's a 10, which is also equal to a Crunch Bar or a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. So this is just like an in general guide. Now, if you're not really trading with friends, more just trading with like random people at school, this is a good guide to know which candy is good and which is bad. Make sure to look out for people who are scamming too. If someone's giving out sweet tarts and they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen a lot of these. If you want them, I'll trade it for," and then they'll say like a more high valuable thing. Make sure to check they're not lying. Ask to see the rest of their candy bag, see if they don't have a huge stash of whatever candy it is that they're trying to scam people with. Also, be safe when you're trading candy. Obviously, don't do it with like old people, do it with your peers. Even then, make sure you're checking the candy people give you so you can make sure no one's modifying it. So this is basically all you need to know when trying to get as much candy as possible and learning about the candy trade. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh god. Not this again.